So the question becomes okay, how did Christianity, biblical Judaism, and Rabbinic Talmudic Judaism, how they've seen each other throughout history?
Yeah.
How has Judeo-Christian look like throughout history? All right, hi, my name is Jerry Doris, and this is Tanner Cartwright. This is Snake on the Table. Brother, what is our snake tonight?
All right, snake is, should we abandon the term Judeo-Christian?
No, let's keep it.
Come in with my
Man, this is a hot topic right now.
Apparently.
Yeah, and kind of surprising.
Yeah.
I mean, I've grown up with it. You grew up with it.
Sure. Well, you would hear it, but I never thought about it.
Well, yeah, so I grew up just thinking that just meant the shared values between us and Judaism.
Yeah.
And it wasn't scrutinized.
Yeah.
I didn't know about its origin.
Sure.
I didn't know about, how long we've been using that.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically that's where I'm at on that.
Yeah, I just throw my cards on the table. I think the answer I would say is no.
That we should get rid of it.
That we should get rid of the term. Yeah, I don't.
I agree with you. Actually,
don't think it's a helpful term. And there's a couple reasons why. So one of the things is it confuses and conflates, because I think most people, when they think of Judeo-Christian, they're thinking Old Testament, Judaism and Christianity.
That's what Andy Wilson and whoever the guy was on their Canon podcast.
That's what he's trying to say.
They conflated that. It was so bad. I'm like, do you even understand history? It's kind of rough.
I didn't listen to him. I can't handle the way he's always like laughing with his face sideways while he's talking.
Well, regardless about that. So let's break down a couple things. I think it's in this discussion, I think it's helpful to identify Judaism, biblical Judaism,
yes,
and Rabbinic Judaism, and then Talmudic Judaism, and that just seeing what those are. So I would argue, and I think you'd agree, we've literally have never talked about this topic. We did not
discuss this before we hit record.
But I think
just
because I feel like I know you, but biblical Judaism is Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, and it's David, and it's the whole grouping of everything that we see in the Tanakh, right? Yep. And so all of that is what we would say is biblical Judaism. And then coming from that, they're all looking forward to the Messiah, and that's Jesus. They're looking to Jesus.
Yes.
And so when Jesus comes on the scene, and those that are in heaven and gone on behalf, they are rejoicing that the Messiah has been born, that he has come.
Yes.
So biblical Judaism, I would argue, is Christianity.
Yes. So
it's just Christianity.
So my argument would be specifically that Judaism in the Old Testament was nothing but pre-Christ Christianity.
Exactly.
It was Christianity looking forward. We are Christianity looking back and forward.
Right.
So they were looking forward to the Messiah coming. We look back to the Messiah who has come.
Yeah. And then those that rejected the Messiah, that group whom Jesus said, if you don't have the Father, your
father is the devil.
Your father's the devil.
Yeah.
And he condemns them for their unbelief, for their rejection, and then he comes in judgment against them in AD 70 and literally wipes out the temple, wipes out the sacrificial system, wipes out over 1 million Jews that are around that area, and they are left devastated while Christianity is continuing to flourish.
Yeah.
And so what is left, the aftermath of that, is what we call Rabbinic Judaism. They had lost everything that they had put value in.
Yeah.
And so
the temple's gone. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're effectively starting over. And then there's the big umbrella, I would say, is Rabbinic Judaism. And then a subset of that is Talmudic Judaism that started when, as the rabbis, they begin to talk and they have case law, and you've got
they took
Mishnah,
oral tradition and wrote it down, and the Talmud is like a commentary on that.
Right. So you've got the longer form one, the Babylonian Talmud, the Jerusalem Talmud, those kind of things. That's all forming in that time from like 200 to 500 or so.
Yeah.
And then everybody since that time, Rabbinic Judaism has like today, there's not a distinction between Rabbinic Judaism and Talmudic Judaism.
And there's another reason people get so
I
confused.
mean, there is technically one's a bigger umbrella,
Sure.
and then Talmudic is a subset of that.
Well, and I've not talked to enough Jews to know if they make those distinctions and delineations and understand. It's like you talk to a Catholic who has no idea what the Catholic Church teaches.
Well, so just, and this will get into, I think we'll go here later, but Jews, there's a spectrum of Jews
Sure,
that are more adherent. And so Orthodox and,
we're talking about religious Jews.
Well, even
not ethnic necessarily.
Even though we're not talking about religious Jews, we're talking about them as a whole.
Yeah.
The Talmud,
how they view themselves.
The Talmud is interwoven in all of them.
Yes.
And it's going to be that secular group, the secular Jews that actually reject God, that kind of stuff.
Well, and I can give you, it's not hard to look up crazy examples of this. Years ago, I realized something was off because I used to listen to Ben Shapiro. I went through a short libertarian phase.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing, but I did. And I was a Ben Shapiro fan. And I listened to him go through the 10 Commandments and explain them. And it's the most gobbledygook thing you've ever heard in your life.
Yeah.
And it makes zero sense until you realize he's interpreting it from the Talmud.
Yeah.
And that's where his thinking is coming from. And it's so perverted. It is nothing like the biblical 10 Commandments.
Right. So we, as biblical Judaism, Christianity, as we look at the Torah and we look at the 10 Commandments and we look at the moral law, it obligates us in a way that it doesn't obligate them.
Yeah.
And they have case law and different explanations in different ways. Jesus was even fighting this amongst them because they were working around ways that they could not take care of their parents by giving money, as korban.
That was the oral tradition that has led to much of what we have now.
Exactly. That whole mindset of how we talk about it is elevated over just the plain reading of the word. And this is what Jesus does when he's looking at the heart and he's saying, you've heard it said you shouldn't commit adultery, but I say to you, if you look at a woman to lust after her, you've committed adultery in your heart. Biblical Judaism is telling you God is looking at your heart.
Well, it's because the Pharisees had figured out ways to get around. It's like, well, you can't commit adultery, but you can do this, this, and this. In the Talmud, it's like sex with certain people or certain age people isn't considered adultery.
Yeah.
And so we could do a whole one on the Talmud. That'd be crazy, but it's bizarre.
I've seen a book I want to get. I haven't read it. It's from Berith Press that goes through those kind of things. I'm just looking at possibly getting the ebook.
If we're going to do an episode, that would be helpful for both of us.
Yeah, let's get some books and
But they were trying to get around the law.
What I don't want to suggest is that everybody who's Talmudic Judaism is immoral or anything
with raping kids.
Yeah, I don't think that.
Because the Talmud says that.
Yeah, I'm not. Let's not dive into that. So those are the categories.
Yeah.
So the question becomes okay, how did Christianity, biblical Judaism, and Rabbinic Talmudic Judaism, how they've seen each other throughout history?
Yeah.
How has Judeo-Christian look like throughout history? And brother, it's so antagonistic.
100%.
And give you an example. So Jews, they've been scattered all over. They've just been unable to.
Every country,
And they've been a pariah in different places. And so they would go into a place and they wouldn't be allowed to be a part of this trade or be about this kind of thing. They couldn't do certain things. But because of some of the ways the Talmud was written, so like Christians could not use usury. They couldn't have interest, those kind of things. But Jews could. Yes. And it was necessary in societies to have, I needed capital in order to, float me for the season while I get my seed before it comes in. And so I'm going to need a little money. I need to borrow money.
Yeah.
So they couldn't go to one another or because not everybody's rich.
Yeah.
You got a Jewish community here. They've gotten, proficient at money and those kind of things because this is the thing that they were allowed to do.
Sure.
And then they're charging between 20 and 200%. Usury because you're a pagan.
Yeah.
You're not Jewish. They wouldn't do it to their Jewish brother.
Yeah.
Well, the Talmud allowed them to do that. Where Christians, because of the way we viewed the scriptures, We couldn't do that.
Yeah.
Biblical Judaism said we cannot charge interest.
Yeah.
We can't have it this way. Jewish understanding of that, oh yeah, you can charge interest to the goy, those kind of things.
Yeah. So
that caused a lot. This causes a lot of tension between them as they.
Sure,
Not only
that, but them them maintain their distinct culture within a culture is always going to cause problems.
Sure.
And so you got that, but there were times in history where the Jews and the Christians were somewhat united, mainly because of the danger of the Muslims. The Muslims were attacking both of them, so there were times that they united to fight they were co-belligerents. Yes, they were co-belligerents. That'd be a better way to put it. But they both had a common enemy. There were times of that. But there was never in history a time when the Jews and the Christians were just like, we're brothers.
Yeah.
Ever. And so it's that in America, I mean, this term is not that old, Judeo-Christian.
Well, first off, let's stop.
Okay.
So I want to say, we go through the early church. I've gone through that. I just got a list here. The patristic period. So Justin Martyr, Augustine, those guys, they believe that no, Christianity's replaced Israel.
Yeah,
they're done. They got wiped out. And a lot of the things that have happened to the Jews, a lot of our church fathers have thought, well, that's God's judgment against these people that
rejecting Christ,
for rejecting them. This was happening in the Middle Ages. You're talking about the Crusades. There was times of that. Even in the Crusades, there's a couple times where Christians got out of hand,
going after the
Jews, and for deicide, for killing Jesus was one of the things they were going after. In the Reformation, you've got the tension. Luther
didn't write anything on this, did he?
He tried to be amicable to them because he was trying to win them to Christ.
100%.
And then when he realized, wait, these guys are so hard.
So antagonistic.
They're so hard. And then people say, well, he lost his mind. No, I think he just came to a conclusion about this.
He was harsh, but Luther was harsh on everything.
Yeah, so Enlightenment period, same kind of things. There's these tensions that are happening there. So here's my challenge. I asked you to bring this today. Will you look up Judeo-Christian in here? I want to see
Look it up. In the Webster's
1828 dictionary, what does it say about Judeo-Christian? So I would argue, Judeo-Christian, a blending, a common, that did not exist. And so let's see what he says. So 1828. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, I didn't even know what you were going to ask me.
Jeopardy music.
Yeah.
Dramatic pause. What's the problem? You don't find it?
No.
You don't find that in Noah Webster's dictionary of 1828?
It's not here.
Do you know why? Because it didn't exist. That was my point.
There you go.
You've just illustrated my point, brother. It doesn't exist. Now, Judaism exists.
Got Judaism.
Judaism exists. What's it say?
The religious doctrines and rites of the Jews as enjoined in the law of Moses, Judaism was a temporary dispensation. Conformity to the Jewish rites and ceremonies. Judaized to conform to the religious doctrines and rites of the Jews.
Yeah.
So Judaizer in the early church was a heresy.
Right. Yeah, so they're recognizing at this time that there is a group called Jews, and they have their community or whatever. But this idea of Judeo-Christian doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And I think that's in
1828.
1828.
Never heard of it. Yeah.
But it does come on the scene. And it comes on the scene as an attempt to try to quell anti-Semitism and for Christians to see our shared heritage. And so that's what's happening in the 20th century. That's especially happening after World War I and World War II.
Yeah.
We're trying to push this narrative, and
Yeah.
it's actually being pushed by the Jews
Yeah.
to try to warm and kind of change the vernacular. That's where we came up with the term anti-Semite that comes in the 1800s as well. Anyways.
Yeah, that term wasn't created until World War II.
Yeah.
Or after World War II.
Yeah, so those terms are coming into play, and the purpose of them is because there has historically always been this tension between the Jews and the Christians.
Yes. and trying to do away with that and minimize that as if we're the same.
Yeah.
We can be together.
Yeah.
We can be united. And Christians and Jews cannot be united.
Well, those that reject Christ and Christ himself condemns and has judged them, they think they have the Father, but they don't. And their father is the devil.
And the scriptures are clear on that. You reject the Son, you've rejected the Father.
Now, I'm going to say this, just us talking about this is going to be we're labeled anti-Semite.
Which is fascinating.
People are going to say we hate Jews. Absolutely don't hate Jews. And I'm okay qualifying that.
Yeah.
To letting people know I don't hate Jews, but I am.
I don't hate any people groups.
We shouldn't.
Yeah.
So
I hate the enemies of Christ. We've already done that topic.
Yeah, I want to touch on a topic because I've been doing a lot of research on this and just kind of why is it that as people are doing a lot of noticing lately.
I've noticed that.
You've noticed that people are
noticed
noticing?
the noticing.
Why is it that Jews are in these, I would say, the cesspools,
so the
nastiest places?
The argument that people make is all of a sudden, if you look up all of the top people that run the porn industry, almost all of them are Jewish.
Yeah,
like a vast majority, even to the point that you can look up quotes from these people that are like that this is inherent to who they are as Jews. Like it's intentional. They're doing it on purpose.
Yeah.
And they're like, we get it from being Jewish.
Yeah.
And so it's like, why?
So in fairness, the guy you're talking about made a famous statement. It's because we hate Christ.
There's multiple quotes, but
this one particular guy.
I know which one I'm talking about.
These are guys that would be considered secular Jews.
Yes.
They have rejected Christ and they've rejected Judaism. They've rejected God. They don't believe in God.
They're atheists.
They're atheists effectively. But they're Jewish by culture.
Yep.
But they just have found them in the cesspool. The big one, everybody says like a rabbi owns Pornhub.
Yep.
So Solomon Friedman, I think his name was, studied to be a rabbi and then he abandoned it.
Yeah.
And then, so that's why they call him a rabbi who owns owns Pornhub.
He started Pornhub or whatever.
Well, he didn't start it, but he purchased it here last year. So he owns that. And so here's my argument. Romans 1 tells me why.
Yeah.
Romans 1 tells me that when you reject God and you deny him, and you literally have denied Christ, you've denied your Messiah, that God gives you over to a debased mind.
Yep.
God gives you over to a hardened heart. And you are looking at people that are as hard as they can possibly be. And they have been this way for centuries.
Yep.
And obviously an individual hasn't been that hard for that long. He's only 35 years,
Yep.
60 years, however old he is. But still, he's part of a tradition of hardness. And where would you expect them to go in society other than the lowest possible places?
If your great-grandparents were hostile to Christ, and they taught your grandparents, and they taught your parents, and they taught you, and you've been hostile to Christ for generations, and that's what you are, and that's who you are, then atheism and being in pornography and just cesspool, as you put it, that would be the natural road.
Jeffrey Epstein.
We're not saying that they do these things because it's in their DNA to be wicked.
That's the thing. So we are not talking about biological determinism.
Yeah.
But you have a people that have historically they've passed down rejection of Christ to each generation.
In the same way that Muslims are inherently hostile to Christianity.
Yeah.
They just are because of what they believed and been taught. And so they teach their children to hate Christianity because it's their enemy.
Yeah.
And they're right. It is their enemy. Yeah. And so what else would you expect? And so people don't get nervous if you talk about Islam being the enemy of Christianity. But they do if you talk about Judaism being the enemy, modern Judaism being the enemy of Christianity. But it obviously is. And
I believe that's because we've been conditioned by the media, conditioned by society, culture, and that kind of stuff, and then an overreaction. And not that we shouldn't have a strong reaction to the Holocaust and all the horrors of what happened in World War II. But I think because of that, it has shaped us and how we view these things. Yeah. In this rejection of Christ.
I have a bad reaction to World War I and World War II as a whole, not just what happened to
You didn't think it should have happened.
I think it's horrible what happened to the Americans and everyone involved.
Yeah.
It was all bad.
We're going to talk about it someday.
We're going to have to do a World War II one eventually.
Yeah.
But anyway, So
I just want to put that out there. I think that's why you see them in there. I am not one. I mean, I love a good conspiracy theory. I really do. They're fun. They're enjoyable. My wife and I watch documentaries on different things. We love that kind of stuff. But
the bullet curve.
Is there a Jewish cabal that controls everything? I mean, there could be. I'm not going to rule it out. But here's the thing. I understand why this particular group finds himself in these particular places.
It makes sense biblically.
Here's
my concern as far as it's a cabal of Jews trying, running everything. Here's the problem. When you tell people that a certain topic is not allowed to be talked about, you create conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
You just perpetuate it.
Yeah.
It's like if you're a Holocaust denier, you go to jail. So guess what? People are like, well, now I'm super interested in the Holocaust. Yeah. And now I'm like, well, and so when you all of a sudden you're like, well, this topic right here, you're not allowed to question or talk about. Well, then the only people that they listen to are guess who? The people that are full-blown Holocaust deniers.
Yeah.
That ends up being the only people they listen to. And you have created a conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
It was like COVID did a similar thing. And it's like, you're not allowed to talk about this and we'll censor you if you do. Well, then it's like, well, holy cow, you just made me a conspiracy theory. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you make it worse.
So your argument would be that we should be allowed to talk about this kind of stuff and have more reputable people talking about this type of stuff so we're not always falling into the fringe groups that just believe anything. I've encountered several of these people here recently. You cannot argue with them. They're so convinced. You just had this happen with a flat earther. He literally said you'd have to go to space to look at it before.
He can't. He will not be convinced. In fact, I sent him a video. I mean, in all fairness, this brother is a sharp guy, smart guy, and he knows his stuff and all that. And I think he's a brother in Christ. I don't doubt any of that. But when it comes to this topic, he is unwilling. Like I sent him a video that I watched. It was a great video, and it explained it really well, and it wasn't mocking flat Earth. And he messaged back. He was like, yeah, I didn't make it. I couldn't even watch the whole thing because it was so ridiculous. And it's like, it was not ridiculous.
Yeah. That's what's happening with those that you try to engage on the Holocaust.
Sure. Both ends of the spectrum won't talk about it. If you disagree with them at all.
They become entrenched and unwilling to just have a normal conversation.
And so then it just becomes an enemy-friend thing.
So I would say our appeal is to the guy who's just interested in this guy. It's okay.
Yeah.
And it's not sin. First off, it's not sin to be a Holocaust denier. I'm sorry.
It's just not.
It's not sin. I'm not going to put you out of the church because you have strong opinions about the Jews.
Yeah.
I've got strong opinions about the Jews. I'm sure what I just said is going to get me, labeled a certain way.
Yeah. I believe the earth is round, and I think I really do believe that.
But it's ruled by Jews, this round world.
Maybe, but they're they're in the they're under Antarctica.
Yeah, they got a control center
under Antarctica. Yeah, but so I don't buy the flat Earth at all. Like I'm not convinced at all. None of the arguments have even a little bit convinced me. Nothing. But if someone believes it and they have their reasons and arguments, and they're not just believing it for the heck of it. They have the reason, it's like, well, 8 inches miles squared is a circular earth. Well, you can see further than that. And so they think that convinces them.
Yeah.
And so, I cannot say that person is outside of the faith because they've been convinced by arguments about that.
And similarly.
But this is where people really struggle with this because it's like, well, was it true or not true? And all truth is God's truth and all these kind of arguments. And it's like, yeah.
Either Holocaust happened or didn't happen if you're denying.
And that's objectively true. We're not saying that it's my truth, your truth. There is an objective truth.
Right.
But is it knowable exactly what happened? And most of the people that I know that are called Holocaust deniers, they just don't believe there were 6 million. They think they've got, their arguments and reasons for, why there were Jews killed and how many. They don't think it was that many, blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
Whatever. But and I don't tend to agree with them on most of that. But at the same time, that is not a biblical standard of orthodoxy, believing something about history.
That's not a gospel issue.
And that cannot be completely and utterly proven one way or the other.
And let's just hit on something here, because this is why we were uncomfortable signing the Antioch statement, is because it kind of pushed that this is a gospel issue. And then while we were okay with signing the
statement on natural affections,
I was okay with that. It wasn't a gospel issue. It was just kind of where we're at on these positions. I've asked men in our church, hey, where are you at on this issue? And they've like, no, I'm not that. I'm not this. I'm not that. So I've got assurances and that stuff. It was okay for me to ask that question, and it was okay for them to answer that question, because there was a question surrounding this. There is a question surrounding this. It's okay in my opinion, to have a statement that kind of addresses some of these things. So I can put my name on and say, yeah, I'm not there. Yeah. We're saying it here.
If you believe George W. Bush bombed the World Trade Centers, that's not an issue of faith. Like, you can believe those things.
I believe that.
Yeah, I don't know.
No, I'm just kidding.
Don't get me started.
I don't have an opinion.
Building 7, man. Don't get me started. But yeah, or the CIA killed JFK. I mean, is that even a conspiracy theory?
I think that's been validated.
I don't even know if there's another way to view that. But anyway, don't get me. Anyway, regardless, okay,
Judeo-Christian. Let's land this plane.
Is that what we were talking about?
Yeah, let's land this plane. I don't think it's a valuable term for us to use. Yeah. I think it's been forced upon us.
It muddies the waters.
It's been forced upon us to have a certain mindset. I think having this clear and natural division between Talmudic and Rabbinic Judaism and then biblical Judaism, which is Christianity, I think that's a good thing to have. Yep. Now, where Jews want to be co-belligerents with us on moral issues, I'm gonna support that. Hey, if you guys are gonna be
in the same way that we're with Catholics at the abortion mill, or all the videos of the Muslims pushing back against the homo agenda, I agree with you on this issue. That we shouldn't be promoting gayness. So gayness. So anyway, So we need to recognize co-belligerence. We need to recognize those kind of things, and there's multiple layers here. You've got the fact of what you do in a church and orthodoxy. You've also got what is good as a society in a civil sphere. Yeah. And so is it good for a civil sphere to allow, a Christian nation, which is what America was, and over 90% Protestant at its founding? Yeah. Okay. So you've got that. Is it good to allow other religions to come in and set up shop and influence that culture? Because all laws are based on morality, and a Jew, and I mean that as a Talmudic Jew or a modern, religious Jew, is going to have a different standard of morality than a Christian. And that influences our laws and the way laws happen. That influences the morality of the United States. Mm-hmm. And so on a civil level, I don't think we should allow it. Mm-hmm. I do not think there should be synagogues. I don't think there should be, mosques. I don't think those things should be allowed. Does that mean we go house to house making sure everyone's worshiping Christ? No, that's not what I'm saying. I still think that there's room for freedom of speech, but you don't allow a subversive influence into your nation. Yeah. Anyway. Okay. All right. We've cleared this up. Should we? Yeah, everybody's got it all clear now. Anyways, hopefully this was helpful. If not, please write to us. You can go to snakeonthetable.com and scroll all the way to the bottom. There's a little form there, and you can fill it out and not give your name. We're going to be twice about this one. Yeah, just hit us up, and if it's worth bringing on here, if it's stupid, we'll just throw it away. We're reasonable guys. Yeah, I think we are. We're reasonable. My wife. We're winsome. We're nuanced. Yeah. Alrighty. Thank you. God bless.